My name is Maya Rodriguez. I'm 34 years old and I live in Austin, Texas. By day, I work as a caseworker at a domestic violence shelter on the east side of the city. I help women escape abusive partners, find safe housing, secure protective orders, and rebuild their lives from nothing. I've been doing this work for nearly a decade now, and I'm good at it. I know how to read people, how to see past the lies they tell themselves and the lies others tell about them. But I never saw the lies my own family was telling. Not until it was too late. I need to take you back to the beginning, back to when I still believed that love and money were separate things. Back to when I told myself that my parents loved both their children equally, and that the differences in how they treated us were just coincidences, small things, nothing to get upset about. I was wrong. I was born in 1992. My brother Derek came first, 5 years earlier, in 1987. We grew up in Rollingwood, an affluent suburb of Austin where the houses have sprawling lawns and the high school boasts a 98% college acceptance rate. It looked perfect from the outside. 2-car garages, manicured hedges, neighborhood barbecues. The kind of childhood that looks beautiful in Christmas cards. My father, Richard Sterling, was an orthopedic surgeon. Successful, respected, always in demand. My mother, Patricia, was a senior vice president at a regional bank before she retired to manage the family's investments and, more importantly, the family's image. They worked hard, and they made sure everyone knew it. But if you looked at the numbers, and eventually I did, you'd see the pattern. Derek's college fund when we were growing up, $187,000. Mine, $42,300. I found the statements years later when I was helping my parents digitize old records. I remember staring at those numbers, my stomach twisting into a knot. I'd asked my mother about it once, casually, trying not to sound hurt. She'd said, "Honey, Derek's older. We had more time to save for him. Besides, we learned from our mistakes with his fund. Don't worry, we'll help you too, just in other ways." Those other ways turned out to be Parent Plus loans. I graduated from the University of Texas in 2014 with $89,000 in student debt. Derek graduated from Stanford in 2009 with zero debt and a management consulting offer from McKinsey waiting for him. The pattern was there, woven into every decision they made. I just didn't want to see it. Christmas 2000 is burned into my memory. I was 8 years old. Derek was 13. He unwrapped a brand new Apple computer, a complete home office setup worth nearly $3,000. I watched his face light up as my father clapped him on the back. "That's for your future, son. A young man needs the right tools." Then it was my turn. I tore open the wrapping paper and found a refurbished sewing machine. It was old, clearly secondhand. My mother had spray painted it my favorite shade of turquoise. I could still smell the paint. "We thought you'd enjoy learning a practical skill," my father said, smiling like he'd given me something precious. I remember staring at that sewing machine, then looking at Derek's computer, then looking back at the machine. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself love wasn't about money. I told myself I was being ungrateful. I was wrong about all of it. Family dinners became showcases for Derek's achievements. It was an unspoken ritual. My mother would set the table, my father would pour the wine, and then the spotlight would turn to Derek. My brother, comfortable as always in the center of attention, would announce his latest promotion or deal or bonus, and we would all applaud. At Thanksgiving 2016, I had just started working at the domestic violence shelter. I was making $39,000 a year, and I was proud of the work. I was helping women who had nowhere else to go. It mattered. My mother set down the turkey and turned to Derek with that familiar glow in her eyes. "Tell everyone about the promotion, sweetheart." Derek grinned. He'd just made partner at McKinsey's Austin office. $480,000 base salary. The table erupted in applause. My father raised his wine glass. "That's my boy." Then my mother turned to me, almost as an afterthought. "Maya, how is your social work position going?" The way she said social work, like it was a hobby, not a career. Like I was volunteering in my spare time instead of building a professional life. "It's good," I said. "I helped 3 families secure protective orders this month." "That's wonderful, dear." She patted my hand like I was a child showing off a drawing. So proud of you. Derek's annual bonus that year was $620,000. He mentioned it casually at dinner, the way you'd mention the weather. I smiled and nodded and pretended it didn't matter. When I met Daniel Chen in 2015, my parents asked if he had career potential. Daniel was a high school physics teacher, earning $58,000 a year. Steady, passionate about education. The kind of man who stayed late to help students who were struggling. They asked Derek's girlfriend, Vanessa, about her family's connections. She was a corporate attorney at a white shoe firm. Her parents were on the board of a major hospital system. You see the difference? Daniel proposed in 2016. We were in love. The kind of love that feels like coming home, like you've been looking for each other your whole lives. I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but we were happy, excited, scared, but ready. My parents were disappointed. I could see it in my mother's forced smile at the baby shower. Well, at least Daniel has a steady job. Teaching is so reliable. My father handed me the check for $1,000 as a baby gift. I found out later that he'd given Derek $30,000 for a down payment on a luxury car that same month. Sophia Marie Chen was born on August 15, 2017, at St. David's Medical Center in Austin. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She had my warm brown eyes and Daniel's easy smile. The kind of smile that made you smile back, even when you were running on no sleep. My parents visited 3 times in her first 2 years. Derek sent a $100 Amazon gift card. I told myself it was fine. They were busy. Derek was focused on his career. I had my own family now, Daniel and Sophia. That was enough. That had to be enough. I told myself that for nearly 4 years. I told myself that love wasn't transactional, that it wasn't measured in dollars and cents, that the people who showed up in the important moments were the ones who mattered. I told myself that I was building something real with Daniel, that we were creating the kind of family I'd always wanted. A family where every child was valued equally, where love wasn't a competition. I believed it. I had to believe it. Because if I stopped believing it, I would have had to face the truth that my parents had always chosen Derek, that I had always been second, that no matter how much I achieved, how hard I worked, how many lives I helped save, I would never be enough for them. And that truth would have broken me. So I told myself a different story. I told myself I was lucky. I had a husband who adored me, a daughter who was perfect, a job that mattered. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their money. I didn't need them at all. I almost believed it. But patterns don't disappear just because you refuse to see them. They wait, they fester, and eventually, they destroy everything. I didn't know that yet. All I knew, standing in my kitchen with Sophia in my arms and Daniel's arm around my shoulder, was that I was building something new. Something that belonged only to us. Something they couldn't touch. I thought that was enough to protect us. I was wrong. Sophia Marie Chen came into this world on August 15, 2017, at 3:47 in the afternoon. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure perfection. I still remember the sound of her first cry, sharp and indignant, like she was already protesting the injustice of being born into a world that would eventually fail her. I didn't know that yet. All I knew, holding her against my chest, was that my life finally made sense. Every disappointment, every closed door, every moment I'd felt invisible, it all faded away. I had Daniel. I had Sophia. I had everything I needed. Daniel cried when he held her. I'd never seen him cry before. He was always so steady, so calm. But when they placed our daughter in his arms, tears just streamed down his face. He kept saying, "She's perfect. She's so perfect." She was. She had my warm brown eyes and his easy smile, a smile that made people trust you instantly, made them want to tell you their secrets. Even as a newborn, she had that quality. Nurses would come in just to hold her. My parents visited twice in Sophia's first year, 3 times in 2 years. I counted because I couldn't help myself. I was always counting with them, the visits, the gifts, the phone calls, keeping score even though I swore I didn't care. The first time they came, Patricia held Sophia for exactly 12 minutes before handing her back. "She's lovely," she said, and then she asked if I'd lost the baby weight yet. Richard stood in the doorway of our apartment, looking around at the modest furniture, the hand-me-down couch, the toys scattered across the floor. "Cozy," he said. It wasn't a compliment. They didn't stay long. They never did. But I could handle that. I'd been handling it my whole life. What I couldn't handle was the discovery I made when Sophia was 6 months old. I was helping my parents organize their financial files, a task they'd asked me to do because I was good with paperwork. I found the statement by accident. Derek's 529 college fund, $187,000. Mine had been $42,300. But it wasn't that discrepancy that gutted me. It was the check stub from the same month Sophia was born. My father had written a check for $30,000 to Derek, a down payment on his new luxury car. I'd been given $1,000 for my daughter's birth. I stared at those two numbers for a long time. 30,000, 1,000. The difference wasn't just money, it was a message I'd been receiving my whole life but I'd refused to read. Derek's new car, Sophia's birth, both happening in the same month. My father had chosen to give Derek 30 times what he'd given my daughter. I told myself I was being petty. I told myself Derek was established in his career, and he needed to maintain a certain image. I told myself the money didn't matter. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being measured and found wanting. The next Thanksgiving made it worse. Derek had just launched his venture capital fund. He was the youngest partner in the firm's history, and my parents couldn't stop talking about it. The table was set with the good china, crystal glasses, silver candlesticks. My mother had made her famous roast turkey with chestnut stuffing. Derek arrived with Vanessa, who was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He spent the first 20 minutes talking about the fund's strategic positioning and market opportunities. I didn't understand half of it, but my parents nodded along like he was speaking prophecy. "Tell them about the new office," Patricia said, practically glowing. Derek grinned. "We just signed a lease in the Austonian, top floor corner unit. The views are incredible." My father raised his glass. "That's my boy. Building something real. Something that lasts." Then Patricia turned to me. "Maya, how is your social work position going?" She said it the same way she always did. Like social work was something I did in my spare time. Like it wasn't a career. Like I wasn't helping women escape domestic violence every single day. "It's good," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I've been working with a family from Guatemala. The mother had been in an abusive relationship for 7 years. We helped her get a protective order and find housing. Her kids are in school now." "That's nice, dear." Patricia patted my hand. "So fulfilling." She didn't ask about the case. She didn't ask about the challenges or the victories. She didn't care. She was already turning back to Derek, asking about Vanessa's family connections at the hospital board. I sat there for the rest of the meal, smiling and nodding and pretending I was fine. I'd been pretending for so long that I'd convinced myself it was true. But Daniel saw. He always saw. Later that night, when we were driving home, he reached over and took my hand. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Fine." "You don't have to pretend with me." I squeezed his hand and didn't say anything, because if I started talking, I might not stop, and I didn't want to admit the truth. The truth was, I'd been invisible my whole life. I'd been the daughter they tolerated but didn't really see. The one who wasn't quite good enough, successful enough, impressive enough to warrant their attention. Derek was their investment. I was just there. But I had Daniel, I had Sophia, and that was enough. I would make it enough. I would build a life so full, so complete, that their approval wouldn't matter. I would create the kind of family I'd always wanted, one where everyone was seen, everyone was valued, everyone mattered equally. I almost succeeded. But you can't run from a pattern forever. You can only pretend it doesn't exist until it destroys everything you love. That's what happened to us. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, methodical. The way a leak in the roof drips for months before the ceiling caves in. I never saw it coming, because I'd trained myself not to look. March 3rd, 2021. That's the day everything fell apart. The day I stopped being able to pretend that my family was just a little dysfunctional and started facing the truth that I was completely, utterly alone. I was in the middle of a crisis intervention meeting at the shelter, trying to help a woman navigate the complex process of getting a protective order against her ex-husband. He'd threatened to kill her 3 times in the past week. I was walking her through the paperwork step by step when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look at it. We weren't supposed to take personal calls during client meetings, but something made me glance at the screen. Barton Hills Elementary. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. Mrs. Chen, this is Rebecca Patterson, Sophia's teacher. Sophia fainted during recess. The school nurse is with her now, but I think you should come right away. My heart stopped. Not metaphorically. For one terrifying second, I felt like my own heart had simply ceased to beat. I'm on my way, I said. I was in my car in under 3 minutes. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember traffic lights or turns or anything. All I remember is the terror sitting in my chest like a stone. Sophia was sitting in the nurse's office when I got there. She was pale, paler than I'd ever seen her, but she lit up when she saw me. Hi, Mommy. I'm okay. I just got dizzy. I forced myself to smile. Hey, baby. You scared me. I'm sorry. Can we go home now? The nurse pulled me aside. Mrs. Chen, her heart rate was extremely elevated when I checked it. 145 beats per minute. She said she's been tired lately, and she's been complaining of dizziness for about a week. I'd strongly recommend getting her evaluated at the ER. A week. She'd been feeling bad for a week, and I hadn't noticed. I was so busy with work, with clients, with everything except my own daughter. I took her to the ER that afternoon. They ran blood work, an EKG, a chest X-ray. I sat in the waiting room, holding Sophia's hand, trying to look calm even though my entire body was shaking. When the doctor came back, I could see it on his face before he said a word. That careful, professional expression they teach you in medical school, the one that's supposed to keep patients from panicking. Mrs. Chen, Sophia's heart rhythm is dangerously unstable. I'm referring her to pediatric cardiology at Dell Children's Medical Center immediately. You don't get referred to Dell Children's for nothing. It's the premier pediatric facility in Central Texas. They take the hardest cases, the sickest kids, the families who are running out of options. I called Daniel from the parking lot. I still remember what I said. We need you. Now. He was there in 30 minutes. We drove to Dell Children's together, holding hands in the parking lot, trying to breathe. Sophia sat in the back seat, humming along to a Disney soundtrack, completely unaware that something inside her was failing. The appointment was March 9th. 7 days of barely sleeping. 7 days of watching Sophia play with her dolls, laugh at cartoons, ask if she could have ice cream for breakfast, completely oblivious to the fact that her life hung in the balance. Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her late 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of calm, steady presence that probably kept parents from completely losing their minds in her office. She performed the echocardiogram herself, moving the wand across Sophia's chest while my daughter watched the screen in fascination. "Is that my heart?" Sophia asked. "It is," Dr. Vasquez said gently. "Pretty amazing, right?" When the exam was complete, a nurse took Sophia to pick out stickers. Then Dr. Vasquez closed the door and sat down across from us. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, Sophia has restrictive cardiomyopathy. Her heart muscle is stiff and cannot properly fill with blood between beats. Her ejection fraction is 32%. Normal is 55 to 70. I heard the words. I understood them individually, but together they didn't make sense. "What does that mean?" I managed. "It means her heart is failing. This condition is progressive. Without intervention, Sophia's heart will continue to weaken until it can no longer sustain her." Daniel made a sound. Not quite a gasp, more like the air being punched out of his lungs. "What kind of intervention?" I asked. "She needs a heart transplant." The room tilted. "A transplant? She's 4 years old." "She's 4? "Yes, the national transplant list has an average wait time of 14 months, but Sophia's condition is severe enough to qualify for priority status, which improves her chances of receiving a donor heart in time. To get her listed, we need a deposit. Dr. Vasquez slid a paper across her desk. I stared at it. Transplant listing deposit, $285,000. Insurance coverage estimated at $47,000. Patient responsibility, $238,000. My vision narrowed to a pinprick. $238,000. The total cost of the transplant surgery and first-year follow-up is approximately $1.7 million, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. But insurance will cover most of that once she's listed. This deposit secures her place on the list. Without it? I whispered. Months, not years. I'm so sorry. And with it? Her 5-year survival rate would be 79%. Not a guarantee, but a chance. A real chance. We need to move quickly, Dr. Vasquez said. I recommend getting her listed within the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks to raise $238,000. 6 weeks to save my daughter's life. I looked at Daniel. He was staring at the paper like it was written in a language he didn't understand. We drove home in silence. Sophia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the tests. That night, after we put her to bed, Daniel and I sat at our kitchen table and went through our finances. Savings, $14,000. Daniel's retirement account, $38,000 after penalties. My 401k, $16,000. We were renters, no equity, credit cards maxed from the birth. We could do a GoFundMe, I said. People do that, right? Daniel nodded. We'll make it. I'll write the description. You can't. You'll cry too much. He was right. I tried and tried. But every time I started writing, I broke down. How do you put words to something like this? How do you write, "Our daughter is dying," and ask strangers for help? Daniel wrote it. Our daughter Sophia, age 4, needs a heart transplant to survive. Please help us save her life. We shared it everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our church, both our workplaces, every parent at Sophia's school. 3 weeks later, we'd raised $42,800 from 2,100 people. Strangers and friends and coworkers sending $5, $10, $50. Messages that said, "Praying for Sophia," and "Stay strong," and "God bless." I cried reading every single one, but we were still $195,000 short. Daniel looked at me across the table one night. It was 1 a.m. We'd been awake for hours, calling banks, researching medical loans, trying to find a way. I called 22 banks, he said. Medical debt isn't collateral. They all said no. I stared at the number on the paper. 195,000. Maya, Daniel said quietly, we need your parents. I hadn't asked my parents for money in 15 years. Not since college, when they'd made it clear that asking for help was a sign of poor planning. But this was Sophia. I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking. I called my mother on April 12, 2021. The call lasted 14 minutes. I know because I checked the log afterward over and over, trying to understand how it had gone so wrong. Mom. Maya, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you? Not great. I need to talk to you about something important. Is Dad there? He's reviewing some medical journal articles. What's going on? I told her everything. The diagnosis, the ejection fraction, the transplant, the deposit, the GoFundMe, the $195,000 we still needed. There was a long pause. Oh, honey, she said finally. Her voice had that careful, sympathetic tone people use when they're about to say no. That's devastating. I'm so sorry. Have you looked into government assistance programs? I've heard there are. Mom, we've looked. There's nothing. We need the deposit. Another pause. Let me talk to your father. We'll call you back. They called back 4 days later. My father did all the talking. My mother was silent in the background. Maya, your mother explained the situation. We're heartbroken for you truly. But we need to be honest about our financial position. We retired in 2018. We're on a fixed income now. Social Security, pensions, and our investment portfolio. The market has been volatile lately. If we liquidate positions now, we'd take a significant loss. We can't jeopardize our retirement security. Dad, Sophia is 4 years old. I understand that. But we have to think long term. What if we need assisted living? What if one of us gets sick? We can't just drain our accounts. How much do you have in savings? A pause. That's not really relevant. Dad, please. I need $195,000 to save my daughter's life. We don't have liquidity, he said firmly. Everything is tied up. I'm sorry. Take out a home equity line. We can't risk foreclosure. Sell the house. The market is down. We'd lose money. Every door I tried, he closed. Dad, please, I'm begging you. I'm sorry, Maya. We wish we could help, but we can't. He hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, waiting for it to feel real. It never did. I didn't know it then, but Daniel tried next. He called my father directly on April 25th. He kept it secret for weeks because he didn't want to hurt me more than I was already hurting. Daniel told me about that call 3 months later. My father's response, according to Daniel, was colder. Son, we understand you're scared, but we can't enable financial irresponsibility. You need to explore other options. What about Sophia's biological father? Daniel went quiet. What? My father said. You're not him, are you? Daniel kept that call from me for 3 months. He couldn't bear to tell me how they'd humiliated him, but I found out anyway. And when I did, I remember thinking, they know we're drowning. And instead of throwing us a rope, they're laughing at the way we're splashing. After my father hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The phone was still in my hand, the screen dark. The call ended. I kept staring at it, waiting for it to ring again. Waiting for him to call back and say he was sorry, that he'd been hasty, that of course they would help. The phone didn't ring. Daniel came into the kitchen and found me sitting there. What happened? He said they can't help us. They don't have liquidity. Everything is tied up. Daniel sat down across from me. He didn't say anything. He just reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was warm. Mine was cold. Maybe we need to try again, he said. Maybe if we go there in person. I shook my head. They made their decision. I heard it in his voice. They're not going to change their minds. But I was wrong about that. They weren't going to change their minds. But I wasn't done begging. The next few weeks were a blur of desperation. I called 15 more banks. None of them would approve a medical loan. I called the hospital's financial aid office, begging for a payment plan, a discount, anything. They gave me a list of charitable organizations that might help. I called every single one. Most of them were out of funds. The ones that weren't had waiting lists months long. Sophia was getting sicker. She was tired all the time now, sleeping more, eating less. She'd play with her dolls for 10 minutes and then have to lie down. She asked me one afternoon, lying on the couch with her head in my lap, "Mommy, why am I always so tired?" I forced a smile. "Your heart is working really hard, baby. You're so strong." "When do I get my new heart?" "Soon," I whispered. "Soon." I was lying, and she knew it. I could see it in her eyes. 4 years old, and she already knew when her mother was lying. Daniel tried to talk to my parents again. He called my father directly on April 25th. I didn't know about it at the time. He kept it secret for weeks because he didn't want to hurt me more than I was already hurting. He told me about it months later, after everything had fallen apart. According to Daniel, the call lasted 8 minutes. My father's response was colder than it had been with me. "Son, we understand you're scared, but we can't enable financial irresponsibility. You need to explore other options. What about Sophia's biological father?" Daniel went quiet. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, wait," my father said. "You're not him, are you?" Daniel said he couldn't breathe for a moment. The implication was clear. You're not really her father. You don't really matter. Your family isn't really family. He told me about that call months later, lying in bed in the dark. I didn't cry. I think I was past crying by then. But I remember thinking, my father said that to my husband while our daughter was dying. On May 2nd, Daniel and I flew to Scottsdale, Arizona. We'd booked the tickets on a credit card we couldn't afford. We had to try one more time, face to face, eye to eye. My parents had retired to a house at 4725 Desert Willow Lane. I remembered the address because I'd looked it up on Zillow later. Estimated value? $1.1 million. They'd downsized from Rollingwood, but not by much. The desert home featured a pool, a 4-car garage, and panoramic mountain views. My mother opened the door. She was surprised to see us. "Maya, Daniel, you should have told us you were coming." "It was last minute," I said. She hugged me. She smelled the same Chanel No. 5 she'd worn my whole childhood. For a moment, I was 8 years old again, believing my mother could fix anything. We sat in the living room. New Italian leather sectional. A state-of-the-art home theater system. A wine cellar visible through a glass door in the hallway. I laid it all out again. The deadline, the deposit, the clock ticking down. My mother cried. Real tears. She held my hand. "If we had it, we'd give it, sweetheart. You know that. But we're old now. What if we need long-term care? What if one of us gets sick? What if Sophia dies?" I whispered. My father's face hardened. "That's emotional manipulation. We're not going to be guilted into a bad financial decision. I'm asking you to help save your granddaughter." "We can't," he said. "I'm sorry." I looked around the room. New furniture, home theater, wine cellar, but no money for Sophia. We flew home the next day. On May 15th, I convinced my parents to visit Sophia at Dell Children's. I actually thought, that if they saw her, held her hand, watched her smile and talk about her new heart like it was a superhero upgrade, they'd change their minds. We met them at Dell, 3rd floor, East Wing, room 318. Sophia was so happy to see them. "Grandma! Grandpa!" She reached out with both arms, careful of the IV lines. My mother hugged her, crying. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "I'm okay. The doctors say I'm going to get a new heart, like a superhero upgrade." My mother smiled through tears. "That's right, baby. You're so strong." My father sat on the edge of her bed. "You're a fighter, Sophia Bear." They stayed for 3 hours. They read to her, they watched her favorite cartoons, they laughed at her silly jokes. And then, in the parking lot, I asked one more time, "Dad, please." He shook his head. "Maya, we've been over this." They got in their rental car and drove away. I stood in the parking lot, watching their taillights disappear, and felt something inside me break. The deadline was 6 days away. On May 21st, I called Dr. Vasquez. "We didn't make it," I said. My voice sounded flat, empty. "We don't have the money." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Maya, I'm so sorry." "What happens now?" "We'll continue supportive care, manage her symptoms, keep her comfortable." Comfortable, not alive. Comfortable. "She's 4 years old." "I know," Dr. Vasquez said gently. "I'm so sorry." That night, Sophia asked me again when she'd get her new heart. I lied. I told her soon. She looked at me with those brown eyes, and I could see that she didn't believe me. But she didn't argue. She just nodded and said, "Okay, Mommy." She knew I was lying. And she accepted it anyway. Because that's what love is. When you're 4 years old and your heart is failing, you accept whatever comfort you're given, even when you know it's not real. I promised myself then that I would never lie to her again. But I broke that promise the next night, and the night after that, and every night until she died, because I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't say, "The doctors say you need a new heart, but we can't afford it, and your grandparents won't help, and we're out of time." I couldn't say, "Your life is worth less to them than a view of the mountains." So I kept lying, and Sophia kept pretending to believe me. I thought I'd reached the bottom of my grief. I thought I couldn't sink any lower. But I was wrong. The worst was yet to come. I didn't know about Daniel's call until months later. He kept it from me because he didn't want to add to my pain. But when he finally told me, I understood something I'd been avoiding for my entire life. My parents didn't just love Derek more. They didn't even see me as family. Daniel called my father on April 25th. He'd been awake all night, trying to figure out another way, another bank to call, another loan to apply for, another option. There was nothing. So he picked up the phone and called the one person who could actually help. The call lasted 8 minutes. My father picked up on the second ring. "Richard, it's Daniel. I know Maya already talked to you, but I'm asking you directly. We're out of time. Sophia's getting worse. We need your help." My father's voice was ice. "Son, we understand you're scared, but we can't enable financial irresponsibility. You need to explore other options." "We've explored everything. There's nothing left. We're begging you." There was a pause. Then my father said something that Daniel never forgot. "What about Sophia's biological father?" Daniel went quiet. He didn't understand at first. Then my father continued. "Oh, wait. You're not him, are you?" The implication hit Daniel like a physical blow. "You're not really her father. You don't really matter. Your family isn't really family. We don't owe you anything." Daniel said he couldn't breathe for a moment. He just sat there, gripping the phone, unable to speak. "Daniel, are you still there?" "I'm here," he managed. "Look, son, I'm sorry. I know this is hard, but we have to think about the long-term implications. We can't just throw money at a situation with no guaranteed outcome. Sophia's chances are—" "I know what her chances are," Daniel said. "She's 4 years old. She's dying. And you're talking about guaranteed outcomes." "Please don't take that tone with me. I'm trying to be practical." "Practical?" Daniel repeated. "Okay. Goodbye, Richard." He hung up. He sat in our bedroom for an hour, staring at the wall. Then he came out and told me he'd been working on a new plan, that he was going to call more banks. He lied to protect me, and I didn't know it at the time. When he finally told me, months later, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been holding on to the hope that my parents might still change. That hope died in that moment. On May 2nd, we flew to Scottsdale. I'd booked the tickets on a credit card we couldn't afford. We had to try one more time, face to face, eye to eye. My parents' house was at 4725 Desert Willow Lane. I remembered the address because I'd looked it up on Zillow later. Estimated value, $1.1 million. They'd downsized from Rollingwood, but not by much. The desert home featured a pool, a 4-car garage, and panoramic mountain views. My mother opened the door. She was surprised to see us. "Maya, Daniel, you should have told us you were coming." "It was last minute," I said. She hugged me. She smelled the same Chanel No. 5 she'd worn my whole childhood. For a moment, I was 8 years old again, believing my mother could fix anything. We sat in the living room. New Italian leather sectional. A state-of-the-art home theater system. A wine cellar visible through a glass door in the hallway. I laid it all out again. The deadline, the deposit, the clock ticking down. My mother cried. Real tears. She held my hand. "If we had it, we'd give it, sweetheart. You know that. But we're old now. What if we need long-term care? What if one of us gets sick? What if Sophia dies?" I whispered. My father's face hardened. "That's emotional manipulation. We're not going to be guilted into a bad financial decision. I'm asking you to help save your granddaughter." "We can't," he said. "I'm sorry." I looked around the room. New furniture, home theater, wine cellar. But no money for Sophia. We flew home the next day. On May 15th, I convinced my parents to visit Sophia at Dell Children's. I actually thought, that if they saw her, held her hand, watched her smile and talk about her new heart like it was a superhero upgrade, they'd change their minds. We met them at Dell, 3rd floor East Wing, room 318. Sophia was so happy to see them. "Grandma, Grandpa!" She reached out with both arms, careful of the IV lines. My mother hugged her, crying. Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling? I'm okay. The doctors say I'm going to get a new heart, like a superhero upgrade. My mother smiled through tears. That's right, baby. You're so strong. My father sat on the edge of her bed. You're a fighter, Sophia Bear. They stayed for 3 hours. They read to her. They watched her favorite cartoons. They laughed at her silly jokes. And then in the parking lot, I asked one more time, Dad, please? He shook his head. Maya, we've been over this. They got in their rental car and drove away. I stood in the parking lot watching their taillights disappear and felt something inside me break. I'd begged them over the phone. I'd begged them in person. I'd brought them to see their dying granddaughter. None of it mattered. They'd made their choice. I walked back into the hospital, up to the 3rd floor, into room 318. Sophia was watching cartoons. She looked up when I came in. Did Grandma and Grandpa leave? Yeah, baby. They had to go. Will they come back? I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't want to lie to her again. But I also couldn't tell her the truth. I don't know, I said finally. Maybe. She nodded and went back to watching her show. She didn't ask any more questions. I think she already knew the answer. That night, when Daniel came home from work, I told him what had happened. I'd been holding it together all day. The polite smile at the hospital, the calm voice on the phone, the steady presence for Sophia. But when I saw Daniel's face, I broke. They're not going to help us, I said. They're never going to help us. He held me while I cried. I cried for Sophia, and I cried for myself, and I cried for the parents I'd always wanted but never had. Maybe we can try again, Daniel said. Maybe we can find a way. There's no way, I said. There's no more time. There's no more money. There's no more anything. I was wrong about that. There was still one thing left, but I didn't know it yet. I started writing everything down. Every phone call, every conversation, every promise they'd broken and every excuse they'd made. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just knew I couldn't forget. I couldn't let it disappear. I had to have a record of what they'd done. I started a folder on my laptop. I called it simply Proof. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I didn't know if I'd ever use it. But I was starting to understand that I couldn't trust anyone. Not my parents, not my brother. Maybe not even myself to remember the details correctly. So I wrote it down. Every word. I had no idea how important that folder would become. August was brutal. Sophia's ejection fraction dropped to 17% on June 28th. She'd lost 11 pounds in 4 weeks. She was exhausted constantly, unable to play with her toys without stopping to catch her breath. Her favorite thing was to lie on the couch with her head in my lap while I read to her. She'd close her eyes and listen, and sometimes I'd think she was asleep, but then she'd whisper, "Keep going, Mommy. I'm listening." On July 15th, I called my parents one last time. No answer. I didn't leave a message. There was nothing left to say. On August 3rd, Sophia was admitted to the ICU. Her heart was failing. The doctors said we had days, maybe less. Daniel and I stayed with her around the clock. We didn't leave. We held her hands, we told her stories, we sang her favorite lullabies. She was so small in that hospital bed, so small and so pale. But she still smiled when she saw us. She still reached for us. She still whispered, "I love you, Mommy," even when she was too tired to open her eyes. At 4:23 a.m. on August 4th, Sophia's heart stopped. I watched them perform chest compressions on my 4-year-old daughter's fragile body. I watched the monitors flatline. I watched the doctors exchange helpless looks. At 4:41 a.m., Dr. Vasquez looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Time of death, 4:41 a.m. I'm so deeply sorry." Daniel broke down. His whole body shook with sobs. I sat there holding Sophia's hand. It was still warm. I couldn't let go. I held her hand for 45 minutes before they made me let go. I didn't call my parents. Derek did. I don't know how he found out. Maybe the hospital called them. Maybe Daniel's parents told them. It doesn't matter. They flew in for the funeral. The funeral was August 10th at Austin Memorial Park. 268 people came. Friends, co-workers, parents from Sophia's school, church members, people from the GoFundMe who'd never even met us. My parents sat in the back row. They didn't come up to me before the service. They didn't sit with the family. My mother wore a black designer suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. My father wore his best bespoke suit. They sat in the back, separate from everyone, like they were attending a distant acquaintance's funeral instead of their granddaughter's. After the service, my mother approached me at the graveside. "Honey, we're so sorry. If there's anything we can do..." I pulled my hand away. "You could have done something. You didn't." "That's not fair, Maya. Leave." My father started to say something, but I turned and walked away. I walked past the crowd of mourners, past the flowers, past the tiny white casket, and I didn't look back. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at our apartment. A condolence card. Inside was a check for $2,500. I stared at it for a long time. $2,500. The cost of a used car. The cost of a vacation. The cost of what they thought my daughter's life was worth. I deposited the check. Then I donated every cent to Dell Children's Medical Center in Sophia's name. I didn't keep a penny. I didn't want their money. I never wanted anything from them again. But I kept the card. I kept the envelope. I kept the check stub. I put them in the folder I'd started on my laptop. The folder I'd called Proof. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I knew I couldn't forget. I couldn't let it disappear. I had to have a record of what they'd done, what they'd chosen. In the weeks that followed, I barely functioned. I quit my job. I couldn't help other families when I'd failed to save my own. Daniel went back to work after 2 weeks because the bills wouldn't stop coming. I stayed home, sitting in Sophia's room, staring at her toys, unable to sleep. Insomnia became my default. I'd lie in bed until 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., replaying every conversation with my parents, every plea, every closed door. Why didn't they help? Why didn't they care? What was wrong with me that they couldn't love me enough to save my daughter? I asked myself those questions over and over until I couldn't feel anything anymore. I thought I'd reached the bottom of my grief. I thought I couldn't sink any lower. But I was wrong. The worst was still to come. 2 months after Sophia died, I still wasn't sleeping. I'd lie in bed next to Daniel, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every phone call, every plea, every closed door. The insomnia was relentless. Some nights I just give up and scroll through my phone, watching the hours tick by. On September 15th at 2:37 a.m., I was on Instagram. I don't even know why, habit maybe. Something to do with my hands, something to fill the silence. That's when I saw it. My mother's post. Helen Sterling, September 15th at 10:14 a.m. Celebrating Derek's incredible success. His new venture capital fund closed its first $50 million round. So proud of our visionary son. #proud parents, #next generation, #legacy. There were photos, 7 of them. Derek and Vanessa at a gala event in what looked like a penthouse. The building was unmistakable. The Austonian, Austin's most prestigious residential tower. The photos showed floor-to-ceiling windows, contemporary art on the walls, a skyline view that probably cost a fortune. I stared at the screen. 68 likes, 31 comments. Gorgeous. What a legacy. So proud of him. Amazing view. Derek's new venture capital fund. $50 million. Launched 2 weeks after Sophia died. I put my phone down. I lay in the dark. I didn't sleep. For the next 2 months, I couldn't shake the image. That penthouse. The pride in my mother's voice, even through a caption. The way she'd written proud parents, like she was celebrating a triumph instead of mourning a loss. I kept asking myself the same question. How could they have money for Derek? $50 million for his fund, a penthouse in the Austonian, but no money for Sophia? How could they be so proud of him while my daughter was dying? I didn't have an answer, but I was starting to realize that I'd been asking the wrong questions. The right question wasn't, how could they? The right question was, What did they actually have? And I was going to find out. On November 1st at 3:15 a.m., I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for. Confirmation, maybe, or just something to do with the rage that was eating me alive. I Googled Derek's venture capital fund. I found SEC filings, press releases, personal financial disclosures from his McKinsey years. Derek's 2020 income, $2.1 million. Net worth, approximately $4.3 million. I kept digging. I Googled the Austonian. I found the building's website, then the property records for Travis County, public information, anyone can search it. I typed in the address, the results loaded. Owner, Derek Sterling. Purchase date, August 25th, 2021. Purchase price, $2.4 million. My hands started shaking. August 25th, 3 weeks after Sophia died. I clicked View Full Transaction History. The purchase agreement had been signed on July 22, 2021, 2 weeks before Sophia died. Down payment, $480,000. Gift funds documented from the Sterling Family Trust. Co-signers, Richard Sterling and Patricia Sterling. They were signing mortgage papers for Derek's penthouse while I was begging God to keep my daughter's heart beating. I printed everything. Transaction history, deed records, mortgage documents, trust documents, wire transfer confirmations, 87 pages. I put them in a 3-ring binder. I didn't cry. I was past crying. The next day, Daniel came home from work and found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. "What is this?" he asked. I slid the binder across the table. "Read it." He read in silence. I watched his face change, confusion, shock, rage. "They had the money," he said finally. "They always had the money." "Keep reading." He flipped to page 24. My father's June 2021 brokerage statement. Balance, $1.2 million in liquid assets. Page 25. My mother's IRA rollover, $890,000, over $2 million in accessible funds. "They told us they had no liquidity," Daniel said. "They told us they couldn't help because everything was tied up." I nodded. They lied. I started a spreadsheet. I needed to see it all laid out. July 22nd, 2021. Purchase agreement signed, $480,000 down payment. July 28th, 2021. Wire transfer from Richard and Patricia's joint account to Derek's escrow. August 4th, 2021. Sophia died. August 25th, 2021. Deed filed. Derek officially owned the Austonian penthouse. They had the money. They always had the money. They chose Derek's skyline over Sophia's heartbeat. I looked at Daniel. They didn't just refuse to help. They made a choice. They actively chose him over her. "What are you going to do with this?" Daniel asked. I stared at the binder. "I'm going to show them what I found." "They already know what they did." "I know, but they don't know that I know. They don't know that I have proof." Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "Okay, what's the plan?" I didn't have a plan yet, but I was starting to see the shape of one. If I was going to confront them, I wasn't going to do it in private. I was going to do it where there were witnesses, where they couldn't deny it, where everyone would know the truth. But first, I needed more. I kept digging. I searched for emails. I searched for text messages. I searched for anything that would connect the dots. And then Daniel found something. He was cleaning out an old tablet we'd used to share photos with my parents back when we still talked to them. It was still logged into my mother's email. She'd never logged out. She'd never deleted her old emails. Daniel opened the app. He scrolled back to July 2021. And there it was. An email from my father to Derek and my mother. Dated July 18th, 2021, 11:23 p.m. Subject, Austonian acquisition. Son, we've reviewed the terms. The Austin luxury real estate market is white hot. A $480,000 down payment positions you perfectly for 18% annual appreciation. Your mother and I have discussed Maya's situation thoroughly. We're sympathetic, of course, but we must make pragmatic decisions. The transplant is a statistical gamble at best. Pediatric restrictive cardiomyopathy has a 5-year survival rate around 72%. We'd be liquidating a substantial portion of our portfolio for an uncertain outcome. Your penthouse is guaranteed appreciation, a tangible asset building generational wealth. Family resources stay in the family. Let's move forward with the closing. Daniel showed me the iPad. I read the email 3 times. Family resources stay in the family. I wasn't family. Sophia wasn't family. We were a statistical gamble, a bad investment. Derek's penthouse was a sure thing. I printed the email. I added it to the binder. "You have everything you need," Daniel said. I nodded. Now I just have to figure out what to do with it. I didn't know yet. But I was starting to understand that I wasn't just a victim anymore. I had power. I had proof. And soon, I was going to use it. After I found the Instagram post, I couldn't stop digging. It became an obsession. Every night when Daniel was asleep and the house was quiet, I'd open my laptop and search for more. More evidence, more proof, more confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the years of neglect and favoritism. On November 1st at 3:15 a.m., I found what I was looking for. I started with Derek. I'd spent years avoiding information about my brother's success because it hurt too much to compare. But now I needed to know. I needed to understand how they could give him everything while giving me nothing. I found his SEC filings. His venture capital fund was registered as a limited partnership, and the filings included detailed financial disclosures. Derek's compensation from McKinsey in 2020, $2.1 million. His net worth, approximately $4.3 million. $4.3 million. He didn't need their money. He was already rich. But they gave him more anyway. I searched for the Austonian next. I pulled up Travis County property records, public information available to anyone who knows how to look. I typed in Derek's name and waited for the results. Owner, Derek Sterling. Purchase date, August 25, 2021. Purchase price, $2.4 million. $2.4 million. For a penthouse he didn't need. I clicked on Full Transaction History. The purchase agreement had been signed on July 22, 2021, 2 weeks before Sophia died. Down payment, $480,000. Gift funds documented from the Sterling Family Trust. Co-signers, Richard Sterling and Patricia Sterling. They'd signed the papers while Sophia was in the hospital, while I was begging them for help, while my daughter was dying. I printed everything. Transaction history, deed records, mortgage documents, trust documents, wire transfer confirmations, 87 pages. I put them in a 3-ring binder. But I didn't stop there. I needed to see the full picture. I needed to understand how much they actually had. I searched for my father's financial records next. He was a retired surgeon, but he still served on several medical advisory boards. Those positions required financial disclosures. I found them. Richard Sterling's June 2021 brokerage statement, $1.2 million in liquid assets. His investment portfolio, another $800,000. His retirement accounts, $400,000. Total accessible assets, over $2.4 million. My mother's IRA rollover, $890,000. Her savings accounts, $200,000. Her investment portfolio, $600,000. Total, over $1.6 million. Combined, my parents had over $4 million in accessible assets. They told me they had no liquidity. They told me they couldn't help because everything was tied up. They had $4 million, and they couldn't spare $238,000 to save my daughter's life. I stared at the numbers for a long time. I added them up again. I checked my math 3 times. $4 million. They had $4 million, and Sophia died because they wouldn't give up a fraction of it. But the worst was yet to come. I found the email on December 1st. Daniel had been cleaning out an old tablet we'd used to share photos with my parents back when we still talked to them. He'd almost thrown it away, but something made him check it first. It was still logged into my mother's email account. She'd never logged out. She'd never deleted her old emails. Patricia Sterling, who managed millions of dollars in assets, hadn't bothered to secure her digital footprint. Daniel opened the app. He scrolled back to July 2021. And there it was. Email from Richard Sterling to Derek Sterling and Patricia Sterling. Dated July 18, 2021, 11:23 p.m. Subject: Re-Austonian Acquisition. Son, we've reviewed the terms. The Austin luxury real estate market is white hot. A $480,000 down payment positions you perfectly for 18% annual appreciation. Your mother and I have discussed Maya's situation thoroughly. We're sympathetic, of course, but we must make pragmatic decisions. The transplant is a statistical gamble at best. Pediatric restrictive cardiomyopathy has a 5-year survival rate around 72%. We'd be liquidating a substantial portion of our portfolio for an uncertain outcome. Your penthouse is guaranteed appreciation, a tangible asset building generational wealth. Family resources stay in the family. Let's move forward with the closing. I read the email 3 times. I read it out loud. I read it to Daniel. I read it to myself in the mirror. Family resources stay in the family. I wasn't family. Sophia wasn't family. We were a statistical gamble, a bad investment. Derek's penthouse was a sure thing. I printed the email and added it to the binder. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the piece that made everything else make sense. I made a spreadsheet. I needed to see it all laid out, in chronological order. The timeline of their betrayal. July 18th, 2021. My father sends the email approving Derek's penthouse purchase. July 22nd, 2021. Purchase agreement signed. $480,000 down payment. July 28th, 2021. Wire transfer from Richard and Patricia's joint account to Derek's escrow. August 4th, 2021. Sophia dies. August 25th, 2021. Deed filed. Derek officially owns the Austonian penthouse. They had the money? They always had the money. They chose Derek's skyline over Sophia's heartbeat. I stared at the spreadsheet. I stared at the binder. I stared at the evidence of my parents' choices. I'm going to show them what I found, I told Daniel. They already know what they did. I know. But they don't know that I know. They don't know that I have proof. Daniel nodded slowly. What are you going to do with it? I didn't have a plan yet, but I was starting to see the shape of one. If I was going to confront them, I wasn't going to do it in private. I wasn't going to give them a chance to deny or deflect or gaslight me. I was going to do it where there were witnesses, where they couldn't escape the truth. I thought about Thanksgiving. I thought about Christmas. I thought about every family gathering where I'd been made to feel small while Derek was celebrated. This time, it was going to be different. I started making calls. I booked a private dining room at a restaurant in Scottsdale, a place with good acoustics, where a confrontation would be audible. I reached out to an old friend from college, Jenna Reeves, who'd become a freelance journalist. I asked her to come for drinks at the restaurant before our dinner. I didn't tell her why. I made copies of every document. I had 5 sets of originals, sealed in envelopes. I put them in my bag. I was done being invisible. I was done being the daughter who didn't matter. I was done being the family resource that got left out of the family. I was going to tell the truth, and I was going to make sure everyone heard it. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I was strong enough, but I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. My daughter deserved better, and so did I. I thought I'd already hit rock bottom. I thought I'd felt every possible shade of pain, every variation of betrayal. But I was wrong. The worst was still waiting for me, hiding in plain sight on an old tablet we'd almost thrown away. Daniel found it on December 1st. He'd been cleaning out the closet in our spare room, getting rid of old electronics we'd accumulated over the years. There was a tablet we'd bought years ago, back when we still thought my parents might want to see photos of Sophia. We'd used it to share pictures with them, back when we still talked to them, back when I still believed they loved us. Daniel was about to toss it in the donation pile when he noticed the screen flicker on. It was still charged, and it was still logged into my mother's email account. "Hey, Maya," Daniel called from the bedroom. "Did you know your mom's email is still logged into this thing?" I was in the kitchen, making tea. I almost didn't respond. I'd spent so many months avoiding anything to do with my parents that the words didn't even register at first. "What?" I said. "Your mom's email, it's still logged in. She never signed out. She probably forgot this tablet even existed." I walked over to the bedroom. Daniel was holding the tablet, scrolling through the inbox. "There's stuff here from years ago," he said. "Old receipts, newsletters, nothing important." "Okay," I said. "We can wipe it when we're done." But something made me stop. Something made me look at the tablet more closely. Something made me say, "Wait, can you scroll back to July 2021? Daniel looked at me. "Why July?" Just do it." He scrolled back through the months. April, May, June, then July. And there it was, an email from my father to my mother and Derek, dated July 18th, 2021, 11:23 p.m. Subject: Re-Austonian Acquisition. I reached for the tablet. My hands were shaking. Daniel saw my face and handed it to me without a word. I opened the email. I read it once. Then I read it again. Then I read it a third time because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "Son, we've reviewed the terms. The Austin luxury real estate market is white hot. A $480,000 down payment positions you perfectly for 18% annual appreciation. Your mother and I have discussed Maya's situation thoroughly. We're sympathetic, of course, but we must make pragmatic decisions. The transplant is a statistical gamble at best. Pediatric restrictive cardiomyopathy has a 5-year survival rate around 72%. We'd be liquidating a substantial portion of our portfolio for an uncertain outcome. Your penthouse is guaranteed appreciation, a tangible asset building generational wealth. Family resources stay in the family. Let's move forward with the closing." I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the air had been sucked out of the room, like someone had punched me in the chest and I couldn't get my lungs to work. "Family resources stay in the family," I whispered. Daniel read over my shoulder. I watched his face change, confusion, then shock, then a cold, hard anger I'd never seen in him before. "They discussed it," he said. "They had a conversation about it. They knew Sophia was dying, and they sat down and discussed it like it was a business decision." "Statistical gamble," I said. "That's what they called her, a statistical gamble." 72%, Daniel said. "They said 72% wasn't good enough. They said it was an uncertain outcome." "But Derek's penthouse was a sure thing. 18% annual appreciation. Tangible asset building generational wealth." I couldn't stop reading it. I read it again and again, each time finding a new detail that made my blood run cold. "Discussed Maya's situation thoroughly." They discussed it. They had a conversation. They weighed the options. And they chose Derek. Sympathetic, of course. Sympathetic, like I was a stranger, like Sophia was a problem to be managed, like our pain was an inconvenience they had to acknowledge before moving on to more important matters. Statistical gamble. Not my granddaughter, not a 4-year-old child, not a life, a gamble. Uncertain outcome, not a chance worth taking, not a risk worth the investment. Generational wealth. Wealth. That's what mattered to them. That's what they valued, not family, not love, not the life of a little girl who just wanted to grow up. I dropped the tablet on the bed. I sat down heavily, my legs giving out beneath me. "They killed her," I said. "I've been saying it all along. They killed her. But now I have proof. I have proof they knew exactly what they were doing." Daniel sat down next to me. He took my hand. "What are you going to do with this?" I stared at the tablet, at the email that had changed everything, at the proof that my parents weren't just neglectful or thoughtless or misguided. They had made a deliberate choice. They had weighed the options. They had decided that a view of the Austin skyline was more valuable than their granddaughter's life. "I'm going to show them," I said. "I'm going to show them what I found. I'm going to make them look me in the eye and tell me why. Why they do this. No, why they thought they could get away with it." I picked up the tablet. I forwarded the email to myself. I printed it out and added it to the binder. It was the last piece I needed. The final link in the chain. The email that changed everything. I had everything I needed. The public records, the financial statements, the wire transfers, the trust documents, and now this, the smoking gun. The email that proved they'd known exactly what they were doing and they'd done it anyway. Family resources stay in the family, I said again. I was never family. Sophia was never family. We were just overhead, expendable, a bad investment. Daniel pulled me close. I let him hold me. I let myself feel the anger and the grief and the betrayal. But I also let myself feel something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time, determination. I was done being invisible. I was done being the daughter who didn't matter. I was done being the family resource that got left out of the family. I was going to tell the truth. I was going to make sure everyone heard it, and I wasn't going to let them deny it anymore. I had the proof, and I was ready to use it. I had the evidence. I had the binder. I had the smoking gun email that proved my parents had made a conscious, deliberate choice to let my daughter die. But having evidence wasn't enough. I needed to use it. And if I was going to use it, I needed to do it right. I couldn't just call them. They'd deny everything. They'd gaslight me, twist my words, make me feel crazy. I'd been through that too many times. I knew their playbook by heart. I couldn't just email them. They'd delete it, they'd ignore it, they'd pretend it never happened. I needed to confront them in person. But I also needed something more. I needed witnesses. I needed people who would see what happened, hear what they said, and remember it. I needed to make sure they couldn't deny it later. I started planning. The first thing I did was call Jenna Reeves. We'd been friends in college, and she'd become a freelance journalist. She covered politics and social justice, but she also did long-form investigative pieces. She knew how to document things. She knew how to keep records. "Jenna, it's Maya," I said when she answered. "I need your help." "Maya? Wow, it's been years. What's going on?" "Something happened. Something I need to tell you about. But first, I need to ask you something." "Okay, shoot." "I'm going to have a dinner with my family, my parents, and my brother. And I need someone there who can witness what happens. I need someone who can record it, audio, video, notes, whatever. I need someone who will remember everything." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Maya, that sounds intense. What's this about?" I told her. Not everything, not yet, but enough. I told her about Sophia, about the transplant, about the money my parents had refused to give, about the penthouse they'd bought for Derek instead. I told her I had proof, documents, emails, financial records, and I told her I was going to confront them. Jenna was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to be at the restaurant. Have a drink at the bar. Pretend you're just there by coincidence. But record everything. Take notes. Be a witness." You know that's not legally admissible, right? If you're hoping to use this in court, I'm not going to court. I just need someone to hear it. Someone who can't be gaslit. Someone who can confirm what happened if they try to deny it later. I can do that. But Maya, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. Your family won't ever be the same. I laughed. It was a hollow sound. "Jenna, my family hasn't been the same since I was born. They made that clear years ago. I'm not trying to save my relationship with them. I'm trying to tell the truth." "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll be there. Just tell me where and when." The second thing I did was choose the location. I wanted a public place, but not too public. A restaurant where other diners would be nearby, where people would hear if things got loud. A private room, but with an open door. Enough privacy to have a conversation, but enough exposure to prevent them from denying it later. I found the Terraces in Scottsdale. It was an upscale restaurant with a private dining room. The room had a door that could be opened or closed. I told them I wanted it open. "Better air circulation," I said. The restaurant was busy on Saturday nights. There would be plenty of people nearby. The third thing I did was prepare the evidence. I'd already printed everything. The property records, the financial statements, the trust documents, the email. But I needed copies. Lots of copies. I went to a copy shop and made 5 sets of every document. Each set went into a separate envelope. The binder I would keep for myself. The envelopes I would distribute. I labeled each envelope Exhibit A, Sophia's death certificate. Exhibit B, Austonian property records. Exhibit C, wire transfer confirmation. Exhibit D, email from Richard Sterling. Exhibit E, financial statements. I put all 5 envelopes in a tote bag and brought them home. Daniel was waiting for me at the kitchen table. "You're really doing this," he said. "Yes. You know, once you do, there's no taking it back." "I know. They'll never forgive you. They never forgave me for being born. What's one more thing?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. "Then I'm coming with you." "Daniel!" "I'm not letting you face them alone. I've been sitting on the sidelines, watching you struggle with this, watching you carry it by yourself. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm coming with you." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Okay, thank you. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me you won't let them break you. Whatever they say, whatever they do, don't let them break you." I thought about it. I thought about all the ways they'd already broken me. I thought about Sophia. I thought about the endless nights of grief and anger and despair. "They already broke me," I said, "but I'm putting myself back together, and tomorrow I'm going to show them the pieces they left behind." We practiced the conversation. I didn't want to sound rehearsed, but I didn't want to get lost in the emotion either. I needed to stay focused. I needed to say what I needed to say without letting them derail me. I started with the binder. I would open it to the first page, Sophia's death certificate. Then I would go through the rest, piece by piece, showing them exactly what I'd found. But I saved the email for last, the smoking gun, the proof that they'd known exactly what they were doing. I also prepared my closing statement, the words I would say when I walked out. I wanted them to be clear, unforgettable. "You are not my parents. You are investors who cut a bad asset." I practiced it until I could say it without crying. On February 10th, 2 days before the dinner, I called my mother. I'd been avoiding her calls for months, but this time I needed to talk to her. "Maya?" She sounded surprised. "Is everything okay?" "I've been thinking," I said, about us, about everything. I'd like to try to heal, to move forward." I heard her breath catch. "Oh, Maya, I'm so glad. What can I do?" "I want to have dinner. All of us, you, Dad, Derek, Vanessa. I'll fly out to Scottsdale. I'll make the reservations." "Of course. We can do it here, at the house." "No," I said firmly. "I've already booked a place, the Terraces, Saturday night. Just be there. I'll handle the details." She was quiet for a moment. "Maya, is there something you want to—" "I just want to have dinner with my family," I said. "That's all." I hung up before she could ask more questions. The next day, Daniel and I packed our bags. I put the binder in my carry-on. I put the 5 sealed envelopes in a separate bag. I checked everything twice. "Ready?" Daniel asked. I looked at him. I thought about the truth. I thought about justice. I thought about my daughter. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." February 12th, 2022. I'll never forget that date. 6:30 in the evening, the Terraces restaurant in Scottsdale, Arizona. The night I stopped being invisible. Daniel and I arrived 15 minutes early. The restaurant was busy, the kind of upscale place where couples celebrate anniversaries and business deals are closed over bottles of wine that cost more than most people's rent. The private dining room was at the back, a glass-walled space with a door that could be closed or left open. I'd insisted on keeping it open. "Better air circulation," I'd told the hostess. Jenna was already at the bar. She was nursing a glass of white wine, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when we walked in, gave me a small nod, and went back to her phone. To anyone watching, she was just another diner waiting for a table. I took a deep breath. Daniel squeezed my hand. "You've got this," he whispered. "Thank you," I said, "for being here. Where else would I be?" My parents arrived at 6:32. My mother was wearing a silk blouse and designer jeans, her hair perfectly styled. My father was in a tailored suit, no tie, but the kind of suit that cost more than my monthly rent. They looked like they'd just come from a country club dinner. Maya, my mother said, hugging me. It's so good to see you. I've been so worried. I let her hug me. I didn't hug back. I just stood there, stiff and cold, waiting for it to be over. My father shook Daniel's hand. Son, good to see you. Richard, Daniel said. His voice was flat. Derek and Vanessa arrived at 6:38. My brother was wearing a bespoke suit and a Rolex that probably cost 6 figures. Vanessa was in a designer dress, her hair in an elaborate updo. They looked like they'd just stepped out of a magazine. Hey, sis, Derek said, kissing my cheek. Long time. Yeah, I said, long time. We sat down. The table was set for 6. White linen, crystal glasses, silver candlesticks. A bottle of wine was already chilling in an ice bucket. I'd ordered the most expensive bottle on the menu. I wanted them to know I was serious. The first 20 minutes were excruciating. Small talk, the kind of empty conversation that fills the silence when people don't want to acknowledge what's really happening. My mother asked about Daniel's teaching. My father asked about the weather. Vanessa talked about her firm's latest case. I just made partner, Vanessa said. It's been a long road, but it's finally paying off. That's wonderful, my mother said, patting her hand. So proud of you both. Derek just closed another round for his fund, you know. Congratulations, I said. My voice was flat. Thanks, Derek said. It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it. I took a sip of wine. I could feel the binder in my bag, heavy and solid. I could feel the envelopes waiting to be distributed. I could feel Jenna at the bar, her phone recording. When did you buy the Austonian? I asked. My voice was casual, like I was just making conversation. Derek looked up. Last summer. We closed in August, I think. August 25th, I said. He blinked. Yeah, that sounds right. And when did you make the offer? July, maybe. Why? I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder. I placed it on the table, right in the center, where everyone could see it. The table went silent. Maya, what is that? My mother asked. I opened the binder to the first page. This is Sophia's death certificate. August 4th, 2021. Cause of death: cardiac arrest secondary to restrictive cardiomyopathy. Signed by Dr. Elena Vasquez at Dell Children's Medical Center. My mother's face went white. Maya, why are you... I flipped to the next page. This is the Travis County property record for Derek's penthouse at the Austonian. Purchase price, $2.4 million. Down payment, $480,000. Co-signers, Richard Sterling and Patricia Sterling. My father's jaw tightened. This is inappropriate. We're here to have dinner. I kept going. Page 5, wire transfer confirmation. July 28th, 2021. $480,000 from your joint Wells Fargo account to Derek's escrow. Vanessa stared at her plate. Derek looked like he'd been slapped. Page 12, I continued. Email from you, Dad, to Derek and Mom. July 18th, 2021. Subject: Re-Austonian acquisition. I slid the paper across the table. I read it out loud, every word. Son, we've reviewed the terms. The Austin luxury real estate market is white hot. A $480,000 down payment positions you perfectly for 18% annual appreciation. Your mother and I have discussed Maya's situation thoroughly. We're sympathetic, of course, but we must make pragmatic decisions. The transplant is a statistical gamble at best. Pediatric restrictive cardiomyopathy has a 5-year survival rate around 72%. We'd be liquidating a substantial portion of our portfolio for an uncertain outcome. Your penthouse is guaranteed appreciation, a tangible asset building generational wealth. Family resources stay in the family. Let's move forward with the closing. My voice cracked when I said, family resources stay in the family. But I kept going. Page 18, Dad's brokerage statement, June 2021, $1.2 million in liquid assets. Page 19, Mom's IRA rollover, $890,000. You had over $4 million in accessible assets, and you told me you had no liquidity. My father stood up. His face was red. Maya, this is completely out of context. You're cherry-picking data to build a narrative. You wired $480,000 to Derek 3 weeks after you told me you couldn't help me. We made a strategic investment decision. You need to understand the difference between... Sophia was 4 years old. My voice broke. She was your granddaughter. She was dying. And you chose granite countertops over her heartbeat. Derek spoke up, his voice measured. Maya, I didn't know the full details of Sophia's situation. Mom and Dad made a financial decision. The penthouse was a solid investment. Say that again, I said. I just mean, statistically, Sophia's odds weren't great. Even with the transplant, the 5-year survival rate is, what, 72%? That's still a gamble. The penthouse had guaranteed returns. She was 4 years old, Derek. My father was still standing, his face flushed. You want the truth, Maya? Fine. Here's the truth. We made a choice. Sophia had a 72% chance at best. We're old. We have to protect ourselves. Derek's investment was guaranteed. We chose the smart financial decision. I stared at him. You called her a gamble. You called her a maybe. Yes. And you know what? Even if we'd given you the money, Sophia probably would have died anyway. Kids with her condition don't make it. We would have thrown away hundreds of thousands of dollars on a... He stopped. But it was too late. On a what? I whispered. He didn't answer. Say it, I said, my voice rising. Say it to my face. We would have wasted $480,000 on a corpse. My mother gasped. Vanessa dropped her fork. Daniel stood up so fast his chair crashed to the floor. Derek went pale. I stood up slowly. I looked at my father. You're right, Dad. Sophia is dead. And you killed her. Not the disease. You had the money. You chose a skyline over her heartbeat. You chose marble countertops over her breath. You chose your son over your granddaughter. I picked up my bag. So here's what happens now. You will never contact me again. You will not call. You will not text. You will not email. You will not show up at my house. If I see you in a grocery store, I will leave. If you come to my funeral, I will haunt you. You are not my parents. You are investors who cut a bad asset. I threw the 5 sealed envelopes on the table. These are copies of everything. Keep them. Burn them. I don't care. I have digital copies stored in multiple locations. If any of you tries to deny this happened or tries to discredit me, I will release everything. To your investors, Derek, and to the state medical board, Dad. You made your choice. Now live with it. I turned to Derek. Enjoy the view. Every sunrise over that skyline, that's Sophia. Every sunset, Sophia. Every time you walk onto that terrace, you're stepping on her grave. You bought it with her life. I walked out. Behind me, my mother was sobbing. My father was yelling something I didn't hear. The door closed. Jenna caught my eye at the bar. She gave me a small nod. She had everything. Daniel followed me out. He didn't say anything. He just put his arm around me and walked me to the car. Are you okay? He asked. No, I said. But I will be. I looked back at the restaurant. My family was still in there, dealing with the mess I'd left behind. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt free. For the first time in my life, I'd told the truth, and no one could take that away from me. The first week after the confrontation was a flood. My mother called 53 times in 3 days. I didn't answer. I watched her name flash on my screen over and over, and I let it go to voicemail. She left messages, 53 of them, I later discovered, but I never listened to them. I deleted them without a sound. My father sent emails. I saw the subject lines in my preview pane before I deleted them unread. Please read this. Let me explain. You're being unreasonable. We need to talk about what happened. I marked them all as spam. Derek texted. We need to talk. This is insane. You're destroying the family. Please just call me. I blocked him. On February 20th, I changed my phone number. I didn't tell them. I didn't tell anyone except Daniel and a few close friends. I didn't want them to have a way to reach me. The letters started in March. Handwritten. My mother's elegant cursive on expensive cream-colored stationery. I recognized the handwriting on the first envelope. I wrote, "Return to sender," and put it back in the mail. The second came a week later. Same thing. By May, I'd returned 14 letters. The 14th arrived on August 15th, Sophia's birthday. She would have been 5. I didn't return that one. I burned it in the backyard fire pit. Daniel found me standing there watching the paper curl and blacken. He didn't say anything. He just put his arm around me. But while I was shutting them out, the consequences were already beginning to spread. Jenna published her article on February 20th. It was titled, "The Price of Blood, A Family's Betrayal." It didn't use any names. I'd insisted on anonymity to avoid a defamation countersuit, but the details were unmistakable. A venture capital partner, an orthopedic surgeon, an Austonian penthouse, a 4-year-old girl who died because her grandparents chose real estate over her life. The article went viral in Austin's financial community. Within days, Derek's fund started hemorrhaging investors. I heard about it through the grapevine. Friends of friends, old colleagues, people who knew people. 2 of his limited partners called him directly, demanding an explanation. One withdrew their commitment entirely. By March, Derek had lost 3 major investors and $12 million in committed capital. His fund was hemorrhaging, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. My father received a formal inquiry from the Texas Medical Board. An anonymous complaint had been filed about unethical conduct that reflects poorly on the medical profession. The board opened a preliminary investigation. I didn't file the complaint. I never learned who did. But I suspected it was someone who'd read the article and connected the dots. My father, who'd spent his entire career building a reputation as a respected surgeon, was suddenly facing the possibility of losing his license. My mother was quietly removed from the invitation list for the Scottsdale Charity Ball. Her name disappeared from the roster of the country club's social events. Her friends stopped returning her calls. I heard that she'd been asked to resign from 2 philanthropic boards. She was being systematically excluded from the social circles she'd spent decades cultivating. Richard responded aggressively. He hired a defamation attorney to threaten both me and Jenna. The attorney sent a cease and desist letter demanding that I retract my statements and return all stolen documents. I hired a lawyer of my own, a pro bono attorney I'd met through my advocacy work, a woman named Sarah, who specialized in First Amendment cases. She reviewed the letter and laughed. "Stolen documents?" she said. "Everything you have is either publicly available property records or legally obtained financial disclosures. They don't have a case." She wrote a response, polite, professional, and devastating. She pointed out that I hadn't published anything, hadn't named anyone, and hadn't violated any laws. She also noted that the documents in my possession were public records, legally obtained, and that any attempt to silence me would be met with a countersuit. The attorney backed down. My parents had lost that battle, but the war wasn't over, not for them, not for me. I started therapy in March with Dr. Grace Kim. She was a warm, patient woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and an unshakable calm. In our 5th session, she asked me a question I'll never forget. "Are you grieving your daughter or your family?" "Both," I said. "You're allowed to grieve both losses." "I only lost one," I said. "The other was never mine." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" "No," I said. "You don't have to." I felt lighter after that session. Not healed. I don't think I'll ever be fully healed. But lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know I could put down. I went back to work in October. Not the shelter. I couldn't face it. Not after everything. I joined the Texas Foster Care Advocacy Project, an organization that helped children trapped in a broken system. Kids who'd been failed by the people who were supposed to protect them. I understood those kids. I saw myself in them. I was making $64,000 a year, helping children who had nowhere else to go. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. And that's all I'd ever wanted, to matter. I didn't hear from Derek again until May 2023. He tried to reach me through LinkedIn. I saw the preview of his message in my requests folder. "Maya, I know you won't read this, but I have to try. I didn't know how bad things were. I was focused on my career. I'm sorry. I want to make it right. Please. I deleted it without opening it. There was no making it right. There was only gone. I built a new life, one where blood didn't mean anything, one where family was the people who showed up, not the people who shared your DNA. Daniel and I had date nights again. We laughed again. We planted a rose garden in our backyard for Sophia, her favorite flower. It bloomed every August, right around her birthday. I thought I was done with them. I thought I'd never have to make another choice about my family. I was wrong. By 2024, I thought I'd moved on. I'd built a new life, a new job, a new purpose, a new way of being in the world. I'd stopped checking my parents' social media. I'd stopped wondering what they were doing, who they were seeing, whether they'd changed. I'd stopped caring, or so I told myself. Then, in March 2024, I saw them in a society column. It was one of those puff pieces that run in the lifestyle section. Where are they now? Profiles of prominent retirees. The article featured my parents posing in front of their Scottsdale home, smiling like nothing had happened. My mother was wearing a designer dress. My father had a new watch. The house looked exactly as I remembered it. The Italian leather furniture, the home theater, the wine cellar. They were still rich. They were still comfortable. They were still living the life they'd chosen over Sophia. I stared at the photograph for a long time. The rage I'd thought I'd buried came roaring back, hot and sharp. They hadn't changed. They hadn't learned anything. They'd just continued, like nothing had ever happened, like Sophia had never existed. I called Dr. Kim the next day. I saw them in a magazine, I said. They're still living in the house. They're still rich. They still have everything. And how does that make you feel? Angry. Betrayed. Like nothing I did mattered. Like nothing they did mattered. Like they got away with it. You're allowed to feel that way, she said. But I want you to ask yourself something. Is your anger because they haven't changed, or because you're still hoping they will? I didn't have an answer, but I thought about it for a long time. The next year, 2025, I received a letter. It wasn't from my parents directly. It was from a law firm. The letter was polite, professional, and devastating. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, we represent Richard and Patricia Sterling. Our clients are aware of the distress you have experienced regarding the family's financial decisions in 2021. While our clients maintain they acted in good faith, they wish to resolve this matter amicably. They are prepared to offer you the sum of $500,000, without admission of liability, in exchange for a complete release and your agreement to refrain from sharing your story publicly. I read the letter 3 times. $500,000. They were trying to buy my silence. I called Daniel. They sent a letter, I said. They're offering me $500,000 to shut up. What are you going to do? I'm going to say no. I wrote a response myself. I didn't use a lawyer. I wanted them to hear it from me. To the law firm representing Richard and Patricia Sterling, I received your letter offering $500,000 in exchange for my silence. I decline your offer. I am not for sale. My daughter's life is not for sale. The truth is not for sale. You can keep your money. I'll keep my voice. I sent the letter and didn't think about it again. But the offer changed something in me. It confirmed what I'd always suspected. They still thought money could fix everything. They still thought the world operated like a transaction. They still didn't understand that some things can't be bought. I started therapy again, this time with a different focus. Not grief, I'd already processed that, but purpose, identity, who I was without them, who I was becoming. I only lost one, I told Dr. Kim. Sophia. The other was never mine. Then what are you mourning? She asked. I don't know. The idea of them? The possibility that they might have been different? You're allowed to mourn that too. I started planting a garden in my backyard, a rose garden, Sophia's favorite. I'd go out there every evening, dig in the dirt, plant new flowers, water them, watch them grow. There was something healing about it, watching something beautiful come from the earth, watching it grow, watching it bloom. By summer, the garden was flourishing. Pink roses, white roses, yellow roses. I'd sit out there with a glass of wine and remember Sophia. Not the hospital, not the illness, not the death. Just her. Her laugh, her smile, her joy. I went back to work full-time. The Texas Foster Care Advocacy Project had become my mission. I was working with kids who'd been let down by every adult in their lives. Kids who'd been failed by the people who were supposed to protect them. I understood those kids. I saw myself in them. In June 2025, I was promoted to Director of Advocacy. It was a big step, more responsibility, more money, more impact. I was overseeing a team of 15 caseworkers, helping hundreds of children each year. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was a good life, a meaningful life. I stopped checking my parents' social media. I stopped wondering if they'd changed. I stopped caring, or so I told myself. But the truth is, you never really stop caring. You just get better at pretending. You just get better at building walls. You just get better at distracting yourself with other things. And then something happens that knocks those walls down, and you realize you're still the same person you were before. Still hoping, still hurting, still waiting for something that's never going to come. I didn't know that yet. All I knew, standing in my rose garden in the summer of 2025, was that I'd survived. I'd survived the loss of my daughter. I'd survived the betrayal of my parents. I'd survived the years of grief and anger and despair. And I was still standing. That had to count for something. I thought I was done with them. I thought I'd built a wall so high, so thick, that nothing they did could ever reach me again. I thought I'd moved on. I was wrong. December 1st, 2026. I was at work, writing a report for a case involving a 12-year-old girl who'd been in 7 foster homes in 3 years. I was trying to find her a stable placement. Somewhere she could stay, somewhere she could finally feel safe. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end, then a voice I hadn't heard in almost 5 years. Maya, please don't hang up. My mother. I froze. My hand tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? Please, that doesn't matter. I know you don't want to talk to me, I know. But it's Derek, he's dying. I didn't say anything. He has cancer, leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia. He collapsed at work 2 days ago. They rushed him to the hospital. The doctors say he needs a bone marrow transplant. They say you're the only chance. Please, Maya, I'm begging you. He's your brother. I don't have a brother, I said. I hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at the wall. My hands were shaking. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat there, trying to process what I'd just heard. Derek was dying. Derek, the golden child. Derek who'd gotten everything. Derek who'd watched my daughter die without lifting a finger. And now he needed me. The irony was almost too much to bear. Daniel came home that night and found me in the same position I'd been in that morning, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. He knew something was wrong immediately. What happened? I told him about the call. I told him about Derek. I told him about the leukemia, the transplant, the only chance. What are you going to do? He asked. Nothing. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he didn't believe me. And honestly, I didn't believe myself either. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Different number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Laura Chen. I'm a patient advocate at UCSF Medical Center in San Francisco. I'm calling about your brother, Derek Sterling. Her voice was professional, calm, neutral. She didn't sound like she was judging me. She sounded like she was doing her job. He was admitted 5 days ago with acute myeloid leukemia. She continued. It's an aggressive subtype. He's begun chemotherapy, but his prognosis without a bone marrow transplant is very poor. We've tested all available family members, his wife, your parents. None are compatible matches. And you want me to get tested? I asked. Yes, siblings have about a 25% chance of being a compatible match. You're his only sibling. Would you be willing to undergo HLA typing? It's a simple blood test. There's no obligation beyond that. I closed my eyes. If I say no? There was a pause on the other end of the line. We'll continue searching the National Registry, Laura said carefully. But the odds of finding a 10 out of 10 match from an unrelated donor are less than 1%. Without a transplant, Derek's prognosis is 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. Sophia had months, and my parents had said that wasn't worth the investment. I'll think about it, I said. Of course, but Ms. Rodriguez, time is something he doesn't have much of. I agreed to the test. I told myself it was just information, just data, just a blood draw. I wasn't committing to anything. December 8th, 2026, 8 a.m. I went to a LabCorp in Austin. They drew 3 vials of blood. The technician was kind, efficient, professional. She didn't ask why I was there. She didn't ask about my brother. She just did her job. The results came back 3 days later. Laura Chen called me on December 11th. Ms. Rodriguez, you're a perfect 10 out of 10 HLA match. I didn't say anything. This is exceptionally rare, she continued. The probability of a sibling being a perfect match is only about 3%. You're Derek's best chance for survival. Will you consider donating? 3%. That was the number. 3%. The same number that had been my odds of being a match. My father had said Sophia's 72% survival rate wasn't good enough odds. 72%, a statistical gamble. But here I was, a 3% miracle. What happens if I say no? I asked. Derek's oncologist will continue searching the National Registry, but Ms. Rodriguez, I need to be honest with you. Without a transplant with his particular subtype of AML, he has weeks, maybe a month if he responds well to chemo. With a transplant from you, his 5-year survival rate would be 60 to 70%. 60 to 70%. Better odds than Sophia ever had. I need time to think, I said. Of course. But Valerie, time is the one thing he doesn't have. I hung up, and for 4 days, I didn't sleep. December 11th to December 15th. 4 days of lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Every phone call, every plea, every closed door. My daughter's face, my father's words, my mother's tears. Daniel didn't push me. He just stayed close, made sure I ate, held me when I cried. He didn't ask what I was going to do. He just waited. I kept thinking about Sophia. What would she want me to do? I knew the answer. I hated it. On December 13th, I called Dr. Kim. Emergency session. She cleared her schedule and saw me that afternoon. What's holding you back? She asked. If I save him, they win. My parents, Derek, they get what they want again. They always get what they want. And if you don't save him? I was quiet for a long time. I become them. Dr. Kim leaned forward. Maya, what would you tell Sophia if she were here right now? I closed my eyes. I saw her, 4 years old, brown eyes, that beautiful smile. I'd tell her I love her, I whispered. I'd tell her she was the best thing I ever did. What would she tell you? I knew. I'd always known. She'd tell me to save him, because Sophia was kind. Sophia was generous. Sophia was everything my parents weren't. And if I let Derek die out of spite, out of revenge, out of a desire to see my parents suffer, I'd be proving them right. I'd be showing that I was just as transactional as they were. I'm not going to become them, I said. I'm not going to let their choices define who I am. Then what are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I'm going to save him. Not because he deserves it. Not because my parents deserve it. Because I'm not them. On December 15th at 8 a.m., I called Laura Chen. I'll do it, I said. I'll donate, but I have conditions. I don't want to see my parents before the procedure. I don't want to see Derek. I'll do this, and then I'm done. We can arrange separate waiting areas and private recovery. You won't have to see anyone you don't want to see. Okay, I said. Thank you. Thank you, Maya, Laura said softly. You're saving his life. I'm not doing it for him, I said. I'm doing it for Sophia. I hung up. Daniel was standing in the doorway watching me. You're sure? He asked. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. He nodded. Then I'm coming with you. I didn't argue. I didn't want to face this alone. The donation was scheduled for December 22nd. I'd fly to San Francisco on the 21st. I'd stay for 2 days of observation, then fly home. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself I was honoring Sophia. But a part of me still wondered, would I be able to look Derek in the eye? Would I be able to forgive him? Would I be able to forgive myself for saving the man who'd watched my daughter die? I didn't have answers. All I had was the knowledge that I was about to do something my parents never would. I was about to save a life I had every reason to let go. December 21st, 2026. I flew to San Francisco with Daniel. The plane ride was quiet. I stared out the window, watching the clouds drift beneath us, and thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. I thought about Sophia. I thought about my parents. I thought about Derek. I thought about all the years of neglect, all the closed doors, all the moments I'd been made to feel invisible. And I thought about the choice I was about to make. Laura Chen had arranged everything. A private pre-op room, separate waiting areas, a recovery room far away from my family. I wouldn't have to see them. I wouldn't have to speak to them. I could do this and leave, and never think about them again. Except I knew that wasn't true. I'd never stop thinking about them. I'd never stop wondering if I'd made the right choice. The hospital was cold and sterile, the way hospitals always are. I changed into a gown and waited for the nurses to come. Daniel sat beside me, holding my hand. You don't have to do this, he said. If you change your mind, we can leave right now. I know, I said. But I'm not going to change my mind. Why not? I thought about it. Because I've already lost so much. I've lost my daughter. I've lost my family. I'm not going to lose myself. And if I walked away now, if I let him die out of spite, I'd be proving them right. I'd be showing that I'm just as transactional as they are, that I only help people when it benefits me. That's not who you are. No, I said, it's not, and that's why I have to do this. The procedure was scheduled for 6 a.m. on December 22nd. They'd draw bone marrow from my pelvic bone under general anesthesia. 4 hours, give or take. 2 days of inpatient observation. You're very brave, the nurse said as she prepared my IV. I'm not brave, I said. I'm just not them. They wheeled me into the OR at 5:45 a.m. I counted backward from 10. I didn't make it past 7. I woke up at 11:15 a.m., groggy and sore. My hip ached like I'd been hit with a bat. Daniel was sitting next to my bed, his face etched with worry. Hey, he said softly. You're awake. Did it work? I asked. They got what they needed. 1,210 milliliters. Derek's transplant is tomorrow morning. I nodded. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to think about Derek. I didn't want to think about what would happen next. I just wanted to sleep. But sleep didn't come. The pain was too sharp, and my mind was too restless. I kept replaying the conversation with Dr. Kim, the conversation with my mother, the conversation with myself. Had I made the right choice? Would Sophia have wanted this? I didn't have answers. All I had was the certainty that I'd done what I believed was right. That evening, there was a knock on my door. I knew who it was before I opened it. I could feel him standing there, waiting. I looked at Daniel. He nodded. I'll be right here. I opened the door. Derek stood in the hallway. He was thin, so thin I barely recognized him. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken. His head was completely bald from the chemo. He looked like he'd aged 20 years in the time since I'd last seen him. He was wearing a hospital gown and holding onto an IV pole for support. Val, he said quietly, I know you don't want to see me. I needed to say something before tomorrow. Please. I stood in the doorway. I didn't invite him in. I don't deserve this, he said. I know that. I know you could have let me die. I would have understood. I wouldn't have blamed you. I didn't do it for you, I said. I know. But I need you to know something. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. For not standing up for you. For the penthouse. For Sophia. I'm sorry. I looked at him for a long moment. Okay. He blinked. That's it? Just, okay? What do you want me to say, Derek? That I forgive you? I don't. But I'm not going to let you die. Not because you're my brother. Because I'm not them. He nodded slowly. I understand. Now go back to your room. You have a transplant tomorrow. He turned to leave. Then he stopped. Maya. What? Sophia. What was she like? The question caught me off guard. I stared at him, trying to find the hidden meaning, the manipulation. But his face was open, unguarded. She was kind, I said finally. She was generous. She had this laugh that made everyone around her laugh too. She loved roses, pink ones. She used to pick them from the garden and give them to people just to see them smile. She sounds amazing. She was. He nodded. He turned to leave again. Then I said something I hadn't planned to say. Sophia would have wanted me to save you. That's why I did it. Remember that. He nodded once more. Then he walked away, leaning heavily on his IV pole. I closed the door and sat back down on the bed. Daniel took my hand. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know, I said. And for the first time, that felt honest. 3 weeks later, I was back home in Austin. Laura called to update me. Derek's engraftment is strong, she said. His blast cell count is down to 1%. The transplant worked. He's going to make it. He asked if he could have your contact information to thank you. I said no. Thank you, Laura. Maya, what you did was extraordinary. I hope you know that. I did what Sophia would have done, I said. That's all. I hung up and sat on the couch. I stared at the wall. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel healed. But I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know I could put down. Like I'd finally done something that felt like the right choice. I'd saved the man who'd watched my daughter die. Not because he deserved it, not because my parents deserved it, but because I wasn't them. Because Sophia taught me that love wasn't transactional. It wasn't an investment with guaranteed returns. It was a choice, and I'd chosen differently. June 2027. A letter arrived. Not to my house, to Laura Chen, who forwarded it with my permission. The envelope was thick, heavy, like it contained something important. I almost didn't open it. I'd been avoiding anything from my parents for so long that the sight of their handwriting made my stomach twist. But something made me tear open the seal. Inside was a letter, handwritten. My mother's elegant cursive on cream-colored stationery. Dear Maya, we don't expect forgiveness. We don't deserve it. We made a choice that destroyed our family. Your father hasn't been the same since that dinner. Neither have I. We're in therapy, together and individually, trying to understand how we became people who could do what we did. I paused. I didn't want to keep reading, but I had to. Last month, we sold the Scottsdale house. We took the net proceeds, $1.1 million, and donated every penny to Dell Children's Medical Center's cardiac transplant program in Sophia's name. We also sold the Austonian penthouse. Derek transferred ownership to us after his recovery. The net proceeds of $2.3 million were donated to the Sophia Marie Chen Memorial Fund at Texas Children's Hospital, established to provide transplant funding for families in need. Our remaining retirement assets, $1.8 million, were liquidated and donated to the National Pediatric Transplant Foundation. We have moved to a small apartment. Our son is rebuilding his life. We are too. I stared at the letter. 1.1 million, 2.3 million, 1.8 million, total $5.2 million. They'd given away everything they owned, everything they'd saved. everything they'd chosen over Sophia's life. We were wrong, the letter continued. Profoundly, devastatingly wrong. If you ever want to talk, we're here. If you don't, we understand. We love you, though we have no right to say that. We're so sorry. Mom and Dad. Attached were donation receipts. Dell Children's, $1.1 million. Texas Children's, $2.3 million. National Pediatric Transplant Foundation, $1.8 million. I sat on the couch, staring at the papers. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just sat there, feeling something shift inside me. Daniel came home and found me in the same position. What happened? I handed him the letter. He read it in silence. Then he looked at me. What are you going to do? I don't know. I called Dr. Kim. They donated everything, I said. They sold the house. They sold the penthouse. They gave away their retirement. $5.2 million. All to pediatric transplant funds. How does that make you feel? I don't know. Empty, angry, guilty? Guilty? Because I feel like I should be happy, like I should forgive them, but I can't. You don't have to. Forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a process, and it's okay if you're not there yet. But they gave away everything. They gave up their retirement. They moved to a small apartment. And that's a good thing. But it doesn't erase what they did. It doesn't bring Sophia back. It doesn't undo the years of neglect. You can acknowledge their actions without forgiving them. You can appreciate their change without trusting them. I thought about that. I thought about it for a long time. I waited a year. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just waited. I needed time to process, to understand how I felt, to figure out what I wanted. During that year, I started hearing things. Derek had become a volunteer for a bone marrow registry organization. He'd spoken at a fundraiser for Dell Children's. He'd stopped drinking. The alcohol had been his coping mechanism for years, he'd told someone. He was trying to rebuild his life. My mother had started volunteering at a local food bank. My father had surrendered his medical license voluntarily. He would never practice again. They were changing. Slowly, painfully, they were changing. But I still couldn't forgive them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. In February 2028, I made a decision. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Maya? Hi, Mom. Silence, then sobbing. Maya, I want to try something, I said carefully. Just coffee or breakfast, at my house, you and Dad, just to talk. Yes, she said immediately. Yes, when? Saturday the 10th, 10 in the morning. We'll be there. I hung up. I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone. Daniel came in and wrapped his arms around me. You sure about this? He asked. No, I said, but I'm going to do it anyway. February 10th, 2028. My parents stood on my porch. They looked old, older than I remembered, smaller, diminished. My father was using a cane. My mother's designer clothes were gone, replaced with simple, modest attire. I opened the door. Come in. My mother hugged me. I stood stiff for a moment, then patted her back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was something. We sat at my kitchen table. Daniel had prepared coffee, breakfast tacos, fresh fruit, 4 plates, 4 chairs. My mother's eyes went to Sophia's photo on the mantel. She didn't say anything. She just looked at it, tears streaming down her face. We ate in awkward silence at first. Then, slowly, we talked. Small things. The weather. Daniel's new position as department chair. Patricia's volunteer work at the local food bank. Richard's physical therapy after a recent knee replacement. Not about Sophia, not about the past, not about what they'd done, just talk. When they were leaving, my mother turned at the door. Can we do this again sometime? Maybe we could. I'll let you know, I said. My father looked at me. It's more than we deserve. Thank you, Maya. They left. I watched them drive away. Daniel put his arm around me. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it. It's a start, I said. And then I started to cry, not from sadness, from something else, something like hope. After they left, I went to the cemetery, Austin Memorial Park. February 14th, Valentine's Day. I brought pink tulips, Sophia's favorite. I sat at her grave for an hour. I told her everything, about the breakfast with Grandma and Grandpa, about Derek, about the funds in her name that had already saved 14 children. I miss you, I said, every single day. I still remember your laugh. I still remember your smile. I still remember holding your hand in the hospital, feeling it get colder and colder, knowing I couldn't do anything to stop it. I took a deep breath. But I'm okay now. I'm not happy. I don't think I'll ever be fully happy again. But I'm okay. I'm building a life. I'm helping other kids. I'm trying to make the world a little better, the way you would have wanted me to. I stood up. I looked at the sky. The sun was setting, painting the clouds pink and orange. I love you, Sophia. I always will. I walked away. And for the first time in 6 years, when I left that cemetery, I was smiling. Not a big smile, not a happy smile, but a real one. The sun was setting. I had a therapy appointment in an hour. Daniel was making dinner. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Thank you for today, love you. I didn't reply right away. I didn't delete it either. I just let it sit there, waiting until I was ready. 4 plates, 4 chairs, a new beginning. Not perfect, but real. And maybe that's enough. I still don't know if I've forgiven them. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process. Some days I'm angrier than others. Some days I see Sophia's face and want to scream at the unfairness of it all. But I also see the $5.2 million they donated. I see the children who are alive because of it. I see them in therapy, trying to understand how they became people who could do what they did. I see them changing. Slowly, painfully, they're changing. I saved Derek. Not because I forgave him, not because my parents deserved it, but because I'm not them. Because Sophia taught me that love isn't transactional. It's not an investment with guaranteed returns. It's a choice. They chose wrong. I chose differently. And maybe that's what matters. Not the forgiveness, not the reconciliation, just the choice to be better. 4 plates, 4 chairs, a new beginning. Not perfect, but real. And maybe that's enough.